in the Mets opening day, you got a bit of a blow. Well, actually, no, a bit of a blow is me being too nice about it, because Jacob deGrom, as we found out, will be out for the first couple months until June, and definitely a hit to the Mets rotation. But with that being said, it's still somewhat deep, so I think they can manage it for a couple months. But so far, what Tyler McGill gave in his first start, not too bad. 5 innings, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts. What were your thoughts on Tyler McGill going into the game?
I think McGill had a tremendous game, and it goes to show the kind of pitcher that he is too. On short notice, being able to pitch on opening day like that, he was ready, and he's a cold-blooded killer. I love everything about him. I think that he's going to be a really good player. He's definitely one of those guys that has been kind of counted out throughout his career, and would honestly be shocked if he didn't become a very solid player. I think that McGill has been very solid. Was very solid last night. I think he's been very solid throughout his career so far. His short Mets career with his rookie year last year, even though his final numbers weren't the most amazing, he definitely had some ups and downs. It was really a story of first half and second half last year, and I think that he's starting to ease into his role a little bit more, and at the very least, he provides us depth, and we're going to need that with deGrom out.
Now, one of the things that was a question mark for the New York Mets going into the season was their bullpen. But so far in opening day, they look pretty good. Trevor May, Adam Ottavino, Seth Lugo, Edwin Diaz, they all combined to give up 1 run and only 3 hits, 4 strikeouts, and really only 1 mistake. That was the Juan Soto home run. But to be fair, that's Juan Soto, one of the best players in baseball. I don't think you can really hold that against them. What is your concern level of the Mets bullpen going into the season?
I'm not very concerned, to be completely honest with you. A lot of people were highly concerned. I think that Edwin Diaz has come into his own, and he's not the stud that he was back in 2018 with Seattle, but he is a very good closer. And I think he's kind of come into his own, a little bit wild at times. But the Ottavino signing, I think, was really good. I always been a fan of Ottavino when he was in Colorado and when he was with the Yankees and then with the Red Sox last year. I think Lugo too, a full year without injury could be huge for him. The Miguel Castro trade with you guys was very interesting. I think Yoeli Rodriguez could definitely give us a good lefty arm. I love that we brought in Jason Shreve again too, because a couple of years ago when we had him, he was fantastic. And I was pissed when the Pirates signed him last year and we didn't bring him back. I think he's a great lefty arm in the bullpen. So I think personally, I think our bullpen is pretty solid. I do. I think so. I think, we got Sean Reed Foley too. We got some depth. We got David Peterson, who could come up and down from the minors. We just signed John Curtis too, who former Tampa Bay Ray, who's injured right now, but could eventually be another arm in that bullpen. I don't have many worries about it, to be honest with you.
So 2 of the new acquisitions had a pretty big role in the Mets win over the Washington Nationals. Mark Canneau had an RBI single, and then you also got an RBI from Starling Martell. Granted, it was on a force out, but still definitely counts for something. So what are your thoughts on them so far going forward? And I know you like those signings during the offseason. Am I correct?
Oh, I love them. And especially the Escobar and Marte signings. I think that Starling Marte is one of the best players in baseball. He really is. He's a 4-tool player. He does just about everything. He plays great defense. He can run. He can hit. He's got some pop. It really didn't hit me until I saw him at the plate last night that he's really a New York Met. I think that he's going to help bolster the lineup big time this season. I was a big fan of that signing. And Eduardo Escobar is just a gritty veteran, solid defender, but power bat who makes great contact, consistently good at bats. Him platooning. I mean, he'll be the primary third baseman, but he could platoon a little bit with JD Davis probably. I think that that's a tremendous way to go. And Mark Canneau too was a bit of an underslept guy. Kind of had a low batting average. A lot of people looked over him, but He's a high on base guy. I think that he's a very solid defender too. He's going to be playing center field probably for a good portion of the season because he can kind of play everywhere. I like all of those signings. It might sound like I'm being a little bit of a homer for the Mets, but I seriously loved all of those signings. I think you had to reshuffle the deck. You needed some extra pieces to potentially start hitting with runners in scoring position, solve all the offensive issues that we had last year.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. I mean, look, from my perspective, obviously this is coming from, I don't know if I'd say outside of more of the crosstown rival fan. I thought those were signings that definitely were pretty good in the short term. But with that being said, I'm still a little iffy on the Starling Martell contract because I think while it's good to have him for the first half, I definitely think the back end is going to get ugly because it's 4 years, 78 million. And we know he's in his early 30s. And I don't know if that's going to end well, but so far, for the time being, I think he's definitely been a pretty good addition for the Mets. And you can see why I, like a lot of other Yankee fans, probably was hoping to get this guy during the offseason. But, in any event, good start so far. And we got a comment here from Nick Morgeson. Shout out to Nick, who is the head of the Entry the Bet Sports Network. How's it going? Hey, guys, great show. Glad to have baseball back. I'm right there with you, buddy. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again for commenting. Folks, remember, once again, if you're watching this show, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. Paul and I would love to get to all your baseball takes, and I promise we will get to all of your comments. I promise I'll make sure to not ignore any of you guys. So I think the next question I have to ask you is pretty much related to one of the big elephants in the room regarding the New York Mets, and that would be Francisco Lindor. Now, I know you're probably one of the bigger Francisco Lindor fans there is out there. Are you not?
I am. I 100% am.
In his first game of the season, went 1 for 5, had an RBI. Now, unfortunately, he did have 3 strikeouts, but what are your thoughts on Lindor going into his second year in New York? Do you think he'll definitely have a better time getting acclimated to the pressures of playing in New York?
Well, I definitely think that he's on the verge up. If you saw towards the second half of last season, he started coming to his own. His swing started to look like the old Cleveland Lindor, and this spring training he looked pretty much the same. So I definitely have high hopes that he's going to have a bounce back. He's too good of a player to not bounce back. Is the thing. He's in his prime right now. He's a tremendous defender, great hitter. I think he's definitely going to be poised to have a bounce back. And I think that even yesterday with the going 1 for, even though he was only 1 for 5, he still got a hit with runners in scoring position, drove in a run, and the 3 strikeouts does not make a difference to me anymore because that's the way the game of baseball is gone now. You're going to the best hitters in baseball are all going to have 100+ strikeouts in a season. You can't even get mad anymore if a guy strikes out 3-4 times in a game. Like it's just bound to happen. That's just the way it is. Nobody really cares about striking out at the dish anymore. So that really doesn't affect me. I think Lindor had a pretty decent game, drove in a run, and I've got some decently high hopes for him.
Yeah, definitely. I still like the talent level. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of the contract whatsoever, but I think you'll still get a few good years of prime Lindor for what it's worth. But my next question I got to ask you is, what are your thoughts on Robbie Canneau? Now, obviously, he's getting what I would pretty much consider, I would probably say a third chance because he's coming off a second suspension for PED use. Are you happy to have him back, or are you not willing to give him the second chance? And also, what do you think he could provide as far as leadership goes in that clubhouse, since he's pretty much one of the elder statesmen on the Mets right now?
Well, according to everybody, especially from the 2019 team, Robinson Canneau is 100% a huge clubhouse presence, and not having him in the clubhouse last season took an effect on the team. That's coming from some of the better young players from the Mets. But that being said, I mean, obviously $24 million for this year and next year is a lot. He's not nearly the same player he used to be, but I'm not terribly against having him on the team, because especially now that we have a DH, if there was no DH, I'd be much more against it because you'd be forced to have him play second base. Now that you got the DH, you can platoon him a little bit. You can stick him at DH sometimes if his bat is still, the bat. I mean, we see Nelson Cruz out here at 41 years old still slashing as a DH. So you really never know. Some of these guys are if they just focus on the DH and not playing the field, they're able to become a lot better. So I mean, I have pretty high. I am pretty satisfied with having Robinson Cano on the team, at least for now. We're gonna have him. We're stuck with him again next year. Obviously, the trade. Don't love the trade. That it happened. It's definitely cost us being able to go out and get some other guys over the last couple of years. But if he can provide anything at the plates as a DH, it would be solid.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it'll be interesting to see what he does in his return from what was a pretty idiotic decision he made. But, unfortunately, the past is the past. Got to let bygones be bygones. Another acquisition that I wanted to talk to you about was Eduardo Escobar. In my opinion, I don't know about you, I actually thought this was one of their better pickups that the Mets made during the offseason. Like, decent infielder, can probably fairly versatile too, I would say, no?
Oh, extremely versatile. He can play everywhere in the infield. Can play first base if you need him to. Can play second, short, and third. Mainly just second and third. But it's I think it was a tremendous move. That was a great one because he's been one of the more underrated players in baseball over the past several years. Was an All-Star for the first time this past year too. He's coming off of an All-Star appearance, and he's only 32, 33 years old, I believe, something like that. He's good. He's a very, very solid veteran, and he's put up some good numbers. He gets drives in a lot of runs, which I think is a big thing. The main thing I wanted to attack this offseason, I wanted to see the Mets attack this offseason, was getting some high RBI guys in the team, because the big issue last year, Pete Alonso was the only reliable guy to drive in a run on the entire team all of last season. The amount of runners in scoring position we left stranded was ridiculous. So a guy like Eduardo Escobar, who has several 90-plus RBI seasons, a guy who can drive in runs, I think it goes a long way. Having a guy like that and, being able to platoon with, some of the younger guys, absolutely good.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Another guy that is definitely been talked about a lot is Dom Smith, probably because I'm hearing his name in a lot of rumors. And Paul, I think you and I can agree that the Mets dodged a major bullet this offseason by not accepting the trade that would have sent him to the San Diego Padres for Chris Paddock and Eric Hosmer. And the reason I really didn't like this trade is because, look, if you really wanted a pitcher that badly when Jacob deGrom got hurt, I think you could have gone with at least one or two pitchers from the Oakland A's, that being Montez and especially Chaminade, who, as we know, ended up signing with going to the San Diego Padres via trade. How relieved were you that trade didn't happen? And second of all, what do you think ends up happening to Dom Smith over the course of the season? Do you think he ends up getting traded, and where do you think he ends up going?
I personally don't think he'll end up getting traded. I think that, in my opinion, I think that he's going to be the primary DH, especially if he's hitting. He doesn't really have too much of a position. We have a full outfield now, especially if Nimmo, Marte, and Canneau are all active, are all healthy. That's going to be the outfield every day. So, and then you got Pete Alonso at first. So, I think Dom being one of the primary DHs is highly likely. Maybe him and JD Davis and Robinson Canneau, on a fully healthy team, kind of being the three guys you look at to DH, and whoever's hitting well. If Dom Smith's going through a tear, you can't take him out of the lineup. But I completely agree with you as far as the trade goes. At first thought, when I first saw that trade, I saw it was Paddock, Emilio Pagan, and Eric Hosmer for Dom Smith. And I'm a huge Dom Smith fan, and I did not want to see him to go, but I was like, and they were also going to send us a ton of money for the Hosmer contract. So I was like, okay, you bring in Hosmer, who is a decent veteran. Paddock has shown some potential, even though he had a bad year last year. Pagan's a decent arm in the bullpen. That's not a terrible return for Dom Smith. And then the more I thought about it, the more I looked into it, the more it kind of hit me that it's like, no, that's not the way we got to go about this, because Hosmer really doesn't have much of a place on the team. He's a solidly defensive first baseman, and if you get him, then it makes a crazy race in the DH spot. You may have to play Hosmer in the outfield, which he hasn't done in years since his early days in Kansas City. Pagan would be an all right reliever, but Chris Paddock too, I've never been a big fan of.
No, me neither.
Never been a
huge
huge
had
fan.
One good stretch, and that wasn't even like a full year either. Like
he had the first half of 2019, he had a great stretch and hasn't done anything since then. I'm not a big Chris Paddock fan at all. I think he had a terrible year last year. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe you bring him in. He's still on a rookie deal, so you maybe just try him out, see if you can fix him or something like that. The Padres are notorious for not being able to develop pitching, which is, has always been a problem. But I was thinking that at first, and I've never been a Paddock fan. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I do not want Paddock anywhere near this team.
And that's not even factoring in the fact that he and Pete Alonso had that beef during May of 2019. I mean, look, we've seen it happen before where players will go to teams. They'll join teammates where they previously got into fights with. Like, those things eventually work out. But I agree with you. My biggest problem with the idea of getting Chris Paddock is that's a move that just reeks of desperation. And like I said, there were better trade options available, especially from the Oakland A's. So I think the Mets ultimately did the right thing. And as cliched as it sounds, sometimes the best trades are the ones you don't make.
Absolutely. And, if Dom Smith ends up getting off to a good start this year and you really want to trade him, you can get a better young starter than Chris Paddock for him, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the guys on the Mets that I expect to have a bounce back, because he kind of dipped down production-wise, was Jeff McNeil. He had a pretty good day, too. Went 2 for 4, had an RBI. Are you optimistic about a possible bounce-back season from McNeil?
I think so. I'm optimistic about it, too. He's too good of a player. Just like I said about Lindor, he's too good of a player to not bounce back. It's not like, McNeil had one fluky season or something like that, and then you could chalk it up as, maybe he's not a good pro or something like that. He had 3 very good seasons, including an all-star appearance, and then had a bad year last year. So he's in all through the minors. He was a 310 plus hitter everywhere he went, every step of the way in the minors. He's been a tremendous hitter his entire career. So he's too good of a player to not figure it out. I think he got too home run happy. We had so much drama throughout the team last year with Chili Davis leaving, and then Quattlebaum, who was awful, being our hitting coach. Like the none of the offense had any time to get any bit comfortable, especially with any of the coaching staff. And I think that ended up hurting a lot of the players. And I think it hurt Lindor's first year in New York. He was adjusting to New York and he didn't really have a good path to go. I don't know how good of a manager Luis Rojas was with the guys. A lot of people loved him, but I don't know, behind closed doors how well he was with developing the players. There was just a lot of drama that kind of caused the collapse last season. And I think McNeil possibly got swept up in it too. Him and Lindor's fight too. They definitely could have sparked some stuff. They were all in each other's heads, and none of them performed well. So I can see McNeil having a bounce back year. I really do.
Was that a rat or a raccoon, by the way?
I think it was a raccoon.
I'm sorry. I had to ask. Now, the last question I really have to ask you regarding your New York Metropolitans before we move on and talk about some of our biggest takeaways with regards to opening day in the offseason is former Yankees manager and now current Mets manager, William Nathaniel, aka Buck Showalter III. So what did you think of the job that he did on opening day? And are you optimistic? And do you like the hire of Buck Showalter?
I love the hire of Buck Showalter. When the Mets fired Luis Rojas, I said the only way you can justify this firing is it by hiring a proven, established manager. That's the only way. Like if they went another route of another young guy that they were talking to, they had a few young guys, they had a few first year head coaches come down to like the end of interviews and stuff, and I was like, you might as well hold on to Rojas at that point, because if Rojas is homegrown, he had 2 decent seasons, like not completely awful, but two decent seasons. I mean, they finished under 500. Like the team wise, they weren't great, but they got off to good starts, and it seemed like he had the team under his belt a little bit. So, but hiring Buck Showalter was the exception. I think that was a tremendous hiring. He's got something to prove still too. He has been a tremendous manager throughout his entire career, 3-time AL Manager of the Year, but never won that World Series ring. And I think that's one thing that eats away at him. I think that's one thing that made him want to come back to baseball, because I mean, when the rumors first started, nobody thought that Buck Showalter was even going to want to come back, because when he left the Orioles, he pretty much retired. And I think that's one very big driving factor to why he took the job, and everybody loves him. Everybody respects him. They speak highly of him. All of his players always say you're never going to lose a game because Showalter makes a bad coaching move, bad managerial move. That's just not going to happen. Which is a breath of fresh air after Mickey Callaway and Luis Rojas blew several games the last couple of years with bad bullpen moves and all that stuff. So I think the Showalter hiring was great, and I think it was good too, because a lot of these guys need some better guidance. A lot of these young guys need better guidance. I think, like McNeil's got to bounce back. He needs some better guidance. A lot of the guys who struggled last year, even Lindor too. Lindor had Terry Francona for the majority of his career and played great, and then had Rojas last year was terrible. So maybe he needs a better manager.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I mean, make no mistake, I don't know if I entirely agree with you about the correct bullpen moves, because I've seen him make a few bad ones in the past. I'm looking at you, Ubaldo Jimenez for Zach Britton. But in any event, though, when you look at his track record, yes, it's true. He has definitely been one of those managers that's often taken a team that was bad and then made them respectable. He certainly did that with the Yankees in the early 90s. He did that with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Unfortunately, with both of those tenures, he got fired shortly before they could really realize their full potential. And as far as the Baltimore Orioles goes, he definitely made them respectable for a few years, but then we all know what happened there. But in any event, yeah, I think if you're going to go about a season where you're trying to go like all in and push for a championship, I think Buck Showalter definitely makes the most sense. Because, I mean, for one thing, he's been around the block before, and I feel like teams that are on the verge need like an old school type of coach, and one who doesn't necessarily rely on analytics, and one who just has a good feel for the game and can like teach the guys a good thing or two. So I definitely agree with that sense.